Okay, a couple of minutes after the hour, and I think we can begin. So thank you everyone for attending today in our continuing series on Local Law 97. We have a great panel today from Rewire Group and New York City Accelerator. We're going to be talking about getting ready to file for Local Law 97. For anyone wondering, this webinar is recorded, and a link to the recording and the slide deck will be shared after the event. So for the agenda today, we're going to go through some brief introductions. We're going to talk about organizing and incentivizing your Local Law 97, deadlines and extensions. We'll talk about steam system retrofits, review a quick case study, and then move on to Q&As. We ask that you please post any questions you have, and they will be read. Eli from our team is on the call with us. He will be going through the Q&As afterwards, and all questions will be answered. So briefly about Building Efficiency Services. My name is Ari, and I'm a VP at Building Efficiency Services. We specialize in retrofitting high-rise, multifamily, and commercial buildings. We've been helping really a lot of buildings throughout the past couple of years get ready for Local Law 97, retrofitting their buildings. We also have some electrification solutions. We're going to have a very interesting webinar in a couple of weeks about electrification solutions for steam systems. We assist with Local Law 97, compliance and incentives, and we've saved New York City just over 3 million therms. Also on our panel today is Alan from Rewire Group. Rewire Group are a firm of engineers and property technology, company of brothers, really phenomenal. We do work with them, really great people. Looking forward to their presentation. And with us from New York City Accelerator is Christina Curry. She is a account manager, a really fantastic resource. Any building managers or owners that are not reaching out to Accelerator or someone like Christina to get assistance, missing out on a great resource. So I'm going to call up Alan now and turn it over to Rewire and ask him to talk about organizing and incentivizing Local Law 97. Alan, are you able to share your screen?
Let me see if I can do that. Is that okay?
Yep.
All right. Hey, thank you, Ari, and thank you for having Rewire here today to be on the panel. Really appreciate you having us join your webinar. Really looking forward to sharing some information about Rewire and about Rewire. Why don't we just do a little bit about Rewire? Rewire started out about 2014. So we've been in business now for over 10 years. And we really started out initially as an energy advisory firm, really providing guidance to our customers being municipalities, property owners, property managers, even some residential work we did in the very beginning. But after a couple of years, we started another part of the firm called Rewire Digital. And initially, Rewire Digital primarily provided services to the energy side. And we built a couple of community solar subscription platforms and subscription management services. We really kind of got heavily involved in community solar in our early days and continue to this day to provide services around community solar. But we really eventually wanted to kind of combine our capabilities and really focus on becoming an energy technology firm. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But Rewire is a NYC certified clean energy training firm. We are authorized in a couple of different categories: renewable energy, power generation, and grid modernization are our specialties in terms of the categories for training. Rewire is also a New York State minority-owned business enterprise, so a New York State MBE. And we have a couple of locations here, upstate New York. We are located in upstate New York. We have an office in the Saratoga Co-works in Saratoga Springs, New York. And that's primarily where my brother Kenny works out of. And I'm here in Albany at the eTech Center, Emerging Technology and Entrepreneurial Complex on U Albany's Harriman campus. And that's really given us a lot of kind of boost in terms of relationships that we've developed in the industry. But as I mentioned before, Rewire is becoming a virtual power company, or VPC. And a VPC really is about staying close to the customer, really developing that relationship. We provide tools and resources and a network of strategic partners that we bring to our customers. But what we really have at the core is technology. And again, we'll talk more about that later. So I just want to kind of identify some of the problems I think that we're all facing in terms of, energy. And at the top, what we call the macro challenge, we understand the demand for electricity is actually growing, and it's unique and unusual because it really has been fairly flat, well over a decade. But now we're seeing increasing demand for energy. A lot of that, as we know, is being driven by, uh, you know, cloud computing and AI data centers. And we're actually bringing manufacturing to the United States. And so advanced manufacturing and like semiconductor chip manufacturing, like we have up here in the capital region, these are all creating significant demand on the power grid. And a lot of that is driven by the electrification of the vehicle industry and also the electrification of the building sector. I mean, really the electrification of everything. But what we're struggling with is an aging utility infrastructure. We have grid components that are, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. And it's really difficult and challenging to add new transmission and distribution and generation to the grid. And we can't really keep pushing even more energy through the same old pipes and wires. And as we know, this is being exacerbated by the changing climate. I mean, we have much more intense hurricanes and storms, more frequent storms, flooding, wildfire, and all these things tend to have an effect on the grid, causing grid dislocation, and that eventually increases costs for maintaining the grid and restoring the grid and all these recovery operations that we see. And so what's the answer to this? What's the challenge is really kind of using distributed energy resources. And distributed energy resources are DERs, and that's really deploying systems like rooftop solar. It's managing and developing power closer to the point at which it's being consumed, shifting the time at which it's used, and storing energy when it's expensive and releasing it, storing energy when it's less costly and releasing it when it's expensive. And it's things like heat pump technology that we're really starting to see grow very aggressively. Heat pumps run on electricity, so we're really increasing the demand for electricity across a number of ways. And so this really comes down to the micro problem. This is what we experience on the ground, and what our customers experience is like, how do we manage and adapt to these rising energy prices? And that's really what Rewire is here for, to help our customers do that. And a lot of this is driven by the need for adapting to the climate issues and mitigating our use of fossil-based fuels. And so that's what's driving the decarbonization, and that's what's driving legislation and regulations. For instance, Local Law 97, which is what we're here to talk about today. And then at the state level, we have the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which is getting ready to be rolled out over the next several years. And then there's the incentive side of the equation that we'll talk about, and that's driving. Hey, how do we again help us to reduce our dependency on fossil fuels? How do we encourage these other types of activities that mitigate those issues? We had the Inflation Reduction Act at the federal level, the bipartisan infrastructure legislation, and now with this new administration, things are changing. So it underscores the fact that it's difficult and challenging to stay abreast of all these regulations and the different incentives. The utilities have their own programs and incentives that encourage use of actually encourage less use of energy during times of congestion, during peak demand, and they actually will pay their customers to take less energy, and that's something that we can incorporate into our process as well. And it all trickles down to the local level in terms of the maze of options that we need to navigate, that we need to understand, and that's what, again, we're here to help with our customers, to help them address those local energy challenges. So we're here today to talk about organizing and incentivize and the incentives that are associated with these programs. And so we all know that Local Law 97 can be difficult to navigate. It's hundreds and hundreds of pages. There's all different components of it. There's prior laws that are connected to the current law, and things change sometimes. So I've gone through it. I don't personally own property in New York City, but I've read through a lot of this so that we can assist in finding the solutions to these challenges. And we know that there's just the sheer volume and complexity of the law lends itself to the potential for uncertainty. What aspects of the law apply to my portfolio? What aspects of the law apply to my building? Which pathway am I on? Is it Article 320? Is it Article 321? What do I need to do to be in compliance? And we all know that property owners and property managers really are focused on keeping their residents comfortable, keeping them safe, making sure they're living in a well-maintained building or having a well-maintained property. It's difficult to have to wade through some of this legislation and do these things with great intention, obviously, that these things are in place, but this is a very complex law. And there's time and resource constraints that we all experience when trying to address these. And of course, there's the cost of compliance. How do I make sure I am in compliance and I'm not getting fined? Is what obviously is what's motivating and driving people to understand these regulations. So we believe the solution is technology, and Rewire is developing a platform called the Zero Energy Operating System, or ZEOS. ZEOS. Did I just lose? Sorry about that. It's like technology sometimes has a mind of its own. So, just getting back to where we were, Zio. So just imagine you had a super smart engineer that was with you and guided you all along the way. Uh, and so we're using AI enabled technology that really has great ability to understand and have access to data, the data about the building, the data about the type of building it is, the square footage of the building, the historical consumption of energy that the building has, the building trends, the weather and the climate, which utility are you using? The system would know. Imagine if the system had all access to all that information and could make very specific, dependable, and reliable, accurate recommendations for what we should do with our building, to give us that roadmap, that forecast that gives us the ability to look down the road and understand what's coming, and gives you absolute better control because of the precision of this information, gives you that operational and financial environmental decision making capabilities that are much more attuned to the reality of what's happening with building and what's happening with legislation and what's happening with climate. And so that really boils down to the energy economics, and how do we then translate this into savings, and how do we actually uncover and have the ability to obtain revenue opportunities through this process. So what if we could make local law 97 compliance easy? What if we could do that? What if we could automate the compliance process, eliminate the filings and refiling and those redundancies that are they're going to save you time and money? What if we could manage that all in one place, a single platform, a single tool that can track compliance across all your properties, your portfolio, whether it's in a different state or in a different region? What if this would be a seamless collaboration between all the stakeholders, all the participants, the building owners working with the service professionals like BES, and keeping all the agencies in a line like the Accelerator, so that we're all kind of working together and stroking in the same direction? And what if that? What if the information was always up to date? We know that the regulations change. We know that the incentives expire. We know that they run out of money. We know that new ones are coming into play on a regular basis. What if we could keep that up to date automatically? That is the challenge. So what if we could automate this compliance process from end to end? What if we selected local law 97 as the one regulation that we could look at and start with? Because it makes a lot of sense, because we've got the biggest city in the world. We've got one of the most ambitious laws that have been produced. What if we could start here? And what if we could just give you a process, a workflow that says, how do I know if my building is subject to local law 97? Which pathways? What are my compliance requirements? What does it mean to me? And then what if you could just simply search? I mean, some of this you can do through the accelerator, but what if you just had this end-to-end process? Search by your building ID number, your BIN, search by borough block lot number, your BBL, or just put your building address in and then understand and have a verified pathway, your compliance pathway. And then obviously, you need these required integrations like the portfolio manager. Where that work has been done, there's other integrations that need to be done that will be required. But what if we could start very simply with just a straightforward linear pathway to understanding what we need to do, and then they take that step, upload the drawings, upload the schematics, the documents that have the rest of the information that the registered design pro requires. And so our partner, Carbon Clear, is developing this process that will be integrated into the Zeos platform. And so here we see that we upload the documents and the registered design pro will have the information they need, but we would have a verification check across other data sources. So it could go back to the portfolio manager, making sure that the square footage that's in the drawings is aligned with the square footage that we have in portfolio manager. So there's these checks on these processes, but it's all automated and behind the scenes. You can even bulk upload a set of drawings across some of your properties and really start to understand how you might make significant time savings as you're going through this process. And then once we've gotten through this point, there's really kind of two pathways in this linear process where we branch. Either you're in compliance and you're below the threshold, you're within the limits, and your building doesn't have any further issues. And then we could then automatically fill out your compliance forms and submit them to the DOB through that Carbon Clear process. But if you're in a building that exceeds those limits, you're going to have a much more, a little bit more complex path. And that's where we send it into the rest of the process. We can do this forecasting. We can give you a basically list of where your building is going to fall in terms of compliance based on your objectives, based on your criteria, your requirements for your building. Are you, do you have the appropriate incentive coverage? That's where we list out the incentives and show you which ones and which incentives apply. That's going to help you mitigate those costs of the prescriptive measures or the other energy conservation measures that are needed to bring the building in compliance. So what does it look like in terms of your 10-year return on investment? What does it look like 20 years out in terms of your return on investment? Can we check the list? Can we check these off? Is the payback period as you've designated, is that acceptable? Has the scope of work been properly defined? And do you have access to those tax credits and deductions that are going to help, again, drive down the costs of deploying those measures? And then if we look at the compliance, we can look out, again, years 1 through 5, are we in compliance? Are we able to check that box? So again, we're outlining all the specific steps that need to be taken for your specific building. It's tailored individually to the building, tailored individually to the portfolio. And then we look at, again, operationally, what is the impact? What's the savings going to be? So the benefits are not just avoidance of potential local law 97 fines, but it's also additive. We can stack up the benefits because you see that you're going to accrue greater savings. Your building is going to be more efficient. Your building is going to be more comfortable. You're going to lower your maintenance costs. So it's not just a compliance issue. It's all these other things that go into creating benefits for the building. What's the ease of implementation of the measures that have been prescribed? Is there potential for rent increase? And then what's it mean in terms of sustainability? What does it do to our carbon footprint? Well, how far down is it going to drive our carbon footprint? So these are are you going to be eligible for renewable energy credits and things like that? Because as we'll see, not everyone can put solar panels on their roofs in New York City. So there's other ways to get yourself below those thresholds. And so we, again, back to technology as a solution. Rewire is developing the zero energy platform. So we are on the kind of the early stages of developing this platform, but we've made some significant progress. And with our partner Carbon Clear, we're going to be able to build this and deploy this end-to-end solution for submitting your paperwork to the DOB, and then we're going to be able to branch into this more complex pathway for buildings that have more complex issues and more challenging issues, and we'll be able to just put them on the platform. Upload your portfolio to the platform. You can always add new properties as things progress. Remember, this system's going to get smarter and smarter over time. It's AI enabled. It's using machine learning to provide all these provide this information. It has access to all that data, so it's really really smart. It's that engineer that's at your side, and then it's very simple. It's very simple. We're taking all that complexity and we're reducing it down to something that's meaningful, measurable, and you can just see basically in your main dashboard, hey, what is the performance of my energy assets? What's the performance of my property? What's my building do in terms of its consumption? We have the historical data that's derived from the utility, and that's what helps us populate this dashboard. We have the information from Portfolio Manager. We have the information from these other integrations, and now we can display for you, hey, here's how your energy assets are performing. If you do have solar, if you do have some energy generating assets, how are they performing? If you've deployed EV infrastructure, how's it performing? What is the cost of the power you're providing, and what are you being paid for by the EV drivers? You'll see that you're actually making a margin there. And then does it make sense for me to deploy a battery at my property? This platform will show you all this information and at a glance, very easy to digest. And then what's really exciting, I think, is the demand response component. The relationship with your utility is that, remember, they are trying to avoid power disruption. And what they want to be able to do is really borrow power from you. And so there's times like during the heat spikes during the summer, hey, instead of putting your thermostat at 68, can you put it at 70? Instead of putting it at 66, can you put it at 68? Those 2 degrees in aggregate actually adds up to what they would have replaced with a peaker plant or something like that if you have enough of that in aggregated together. So this program will track, how many events are you participating in, what are you saving, and what are you actually being paid. So this platform will give you all that information, and then it'll be more granular as you drill down into it. If you're an operational person or you're a financial person, you want the platform to conform to your needs. What do you want to see? What's of interest to you? What are you tracking? Are you tracking building performance? Are you tracking performance of the energy assets? You can get nice charts that show you the trends. You can use those trends to make decisions. And eventually, as the system gets even smarter, it's going to talk to you. It's going to give you those recommendations. The voice of Zeos is going to inform you about what makes sense, what's coming. Hey, don't put those measures in place in the second quarter of 2025. Wait till Q1 2026 because it's going to be more economical for you to do it at that point. Or there's new incentives that are going to be implemented at that time that are going to be much more favorable than what you have right now. So this is the future of how energy management is going to take place. This is how we're going to be able to communicate all that information, and it's the orchestration of all these assets. It's the holistic aspect, bringing it to bear to help inform the property owners, the property managers, and developers of what's happening with energy in their business. The CLCPA is just starting to be rolled out over the next few years. Obviously we're at the beginning stages of Local Law 97. And it gets a little more challenging as the years go on. So I think this is something that's going to be very informative. It's going to be very beneficial. So say you're a property manager and you've got a bunch of property owners, you can report to them saying, here are the savings that we're providing you, and you can give them a report. You can say you saved $928 last month off your energy bill because of the programs that we've provided, like for instance, community solar. And then we can see it in aggregate. What if we add it all up together? What are the broad savings across portfolios? And then you can give them their own dashboard. And so in this instance, they only have the solar array, the community solar. So they're seeing what they earn from that community solar array, seeing their savings and seeing their benefits. But what if they wanted to do one of these other projects? What would that look like? If they wanted to install a heat pump in their building, they would simply tap on that tile and it would give them the economics. It would give them the metrics and values of, hey, this is what it would do in terms of savings. This is what it would do in terms of return on investment. This is the payback period. And again, so that's what I mean by it gives you all those tools to make those decisions. And that's the future of how property management, we believe, will take place by being able to provide you the information, giving you a snapshot, showing you what it looks like, and helping you look toward the future. That's our presentation for today. and just we'll be happy to answer questions as we go forward.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Alan. I'm going to see if I can get my screen back up. And we're going to hand it over now to Christina from New York City Accelerator. We're going to talk about deadlines and extensions. Please go ahead, Christina.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Hello, humans and AI note takers. As Ari said, I'm Christina with the New York City Accelerator. I'm one of the account managers, and I'll try to keep it quick. But we can go to the next slide, and I'll talk a little bit about what the Accelerator is. So the Accelerator is a program through the city, through the Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice. We were designed to help building owners and property managers address compliance requirements for local laws like 97 and 88, help control costs, energy costs, boost building performance, increase energy savings, and reduce the carbon emissions across the city. So essentially, we're here to offer free technical guidance, objective guidance, and helping connect you with incentives, financing, service providers, and kind of walk you through the process from beginning to end as sort of a free hand holder throughout the process. Next slide, please. So how do we work? The big requirement is that you must be a privately owned building over 5,000 square feet in the city of New York, new construction or existing building. If you do have a building smaller than that, you can still reach out to us and we can connect you to one of our partner organizations. And it's really easy to get in touch. You just call us and get connected with a dedicated account manager like myself. And we'll go through your buildings and portfolio and give you objective advice customized to what exactly you're looking for. And like I said, it's a completely free program. Oops, can you go back one more? Ooh, now we're going forward. Well, point is, it's a free program. There is no cost, no catch. You can talk to us as many times or as few times as you'd like. All right, we can go ahead. And for 97, essentially it starts out, you present us with your portfolio or addresses. We'll help clarify what exactly the 97 requirements are for your building, identify where your emissions are currently standing and compare it to the limits, determine your compliance pathways. There are quite a few options. I'll go through a few of them today. Help identify incentives or financing if necessary. And then we, like I said, from beginning to end, offer project management support. Next, please. So Local Law 97, this timeline is very important. It spans all the way from the law's creation in 2019 to the not so far future of 2050. Right now, we are in 2025, believe it or not. I keep forgetting. But we are very close to this bolded first point at the top of the Article 320 First Annual Report and Decarbonization Plan due, as well as the Article 321 report being due. This is very important. We are getting really, really close. If you have not already contacted an RDP, it's not even encouraging you anymore. You really should do it soon if you want to have something submitted in time. And I'll talk a little bit more about what penalty mitigation can look like and what exactly the submission process looks like so you can get a better idea for your building. Next, please. So overall, Local Law 97, there's Article 320 and Article 321. Article 320 refers to market rate buildings over 25,000 square feet. So that includes market rate multifamily and commercial and industrial buildings for the most part. And those will be required to meet the emissions limits set forth by DOB. So there is a first compliance period of 2024 to 2029 that has a limit. That limit will then decrease. Actually, can you click one more time, Ari? I think there's a graphic. There's the graphic. So there are carbon emissions limits, as you can see, that drop every 5 years for each compliance period. Buildings will be expected to meet these limits going forward through 2035, 2040, every 5 years until carbon neutrality is reached by 2050. As it stands now, 89% of properties are projected to meet the first emissions limit, so that's great. So if this has caught you by surprise, odds are you should be okay. But then when we get to 2030, that number decreases to 63%. So it's definitely time to start thinking about how to reach those 2030 limits. And then Article 321 is for affordable housing and houses of worship. And so they have slightly different requirements. That either requires meeting 2030 emissions limits, so the second compliance period lower number within 2024, or by 2024, or you implement the prescriptive energy conservation measures, which are a list that I will show a little bit later, that you can implement specifically. And once those are done, it's a one-time report for both of these for affordable housing buildings under this category. Next slide, please. So the emissions compliance pathway is what I was talking about, where you're obviously below the emissions limit. Essentially, the way this works is the owner must demonstrate compliance with the annual limit for that year. It's very important that the accurate gross floor area is correct. That is kind of what decides your emissions limit, along with the building usage, whether that's multifamily, retail store, things like that. The usage is also very important, and the limit is set based on that. And starting in 2025, May 1st, 2025, and annually thereafter, you must file a Local Law 97 report certified by a registered design professional. That is either a PE or RA, so professional engineer or registered architect in the state of New York. And you can get an idea of your annual penalties through this calculator here, as well as looking at past benchmarking data, just to kind of give you an estimate of what it may look like for years going ahead. And any excess over the carbon emissions limit has a penalty of $268 per metric ton of carbon emissions over the limit, paid annually until compliant. And then the exception there is that Article 321 that I was talking about, that we'll go into a little later, but that also has a different penalty structure. So we can go to the next slide. So here's that penalty structure illustrated for each article. So Article 321, if you do not file a report at all, you will be faced with a fine of your floor area, 50 cents per square footage of floor area. So at minimum, that is $12,500 monthly if you do not submit a report. And that is hefty. So I do want everyone to make sure they are aware of this and are not caught by surprise by anything. And the other kind of prong to the penalty is being over the emissions limit. So there's two here. They're submitting the report and the actual emissions. This would be fined annually, and it's based on how, again, like I just described, how far you are above the limit. And then for Article 321, it's more of a flat penalty. So it's $10,000 for not submitting the report and $10,000 for not complying with the necessary measures. So this is max $20,000 for the affordable housing under this category. And then we're going to switch gears a little bit to flag Local Law 88. This is a lighting and submetering law. It's not the same as Local Law 97, but it is obviously related. This applies to pretty much the same pool of buildings over 25,000 square feet, except houses of worship. Submeters are required for any non-residential tenant spaces greater than 5,000 square feet in either multifamily or commercial and industrial buildings. And an attestation letter certifying the compliance with this law must be submitted again by May 1st, 2025, by either the RDP, so whoever does your Local Law 97, a licensed master electrician or a licensed special electrician. Next, please. And so Local Law 88, it's a little complicated. I just like to include this graphic to give a better idea, but pretty much any upgrades made after July 1st, 2010 would need to be in compliance with the energy conservation code that was in place at that time. This is something to discuss with whoever is attesting to your report, but just so you know, if you recently upgraded lighting, you don't necessarily have to upgrade it again in 2024. If you have not upgraded it, you will likely have to upgrade it to meet the 2020 Energy Conservation Code by May 1st of this year. Next, please. And now we're at the fun part of penalty mitigation. So for Article 320, this is for Article 320 specifically, there's something called the good faith effort, which is pretty much saying, you know, I did my best, or I'm trying to do my best. So again, the two main kind of penalty prongs are meeting the limits and submitting the report. The penalty mitigation options, either if there was some sort of unexpected or unforeseeable event, you're able to avoid penalty. This kind of is like an act of God, natural disaster type of thing, a fire or a flood. If this has happened, you can avoid penalties. The good faith effort is essentially just saying, I need more time to do the work and to get in compliance, but it is a pretty intensive process. So the good faith effort requires that the emissions report is submitted, your benchmarking Local Law 84 is submitted, and Local Law 88, which I just talked about for this exact reason, also must be completed on time. And then you complete one of these 6 sort of supplemental reports with that. I'm not going to go into all of them because it's a lot, but for the most part, decarbonization plan is one of the more common ones. So next slide, I'll talk a little bit about what that entails. So the decarbonization plan essentially illustrates a long-term plan for reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2050, and that includes an energy audit, an inventory of major equipment. So if you've done Local 87 before, it's similar to that. Then the list of alterations needed for compliance, including the timeline, financing plan, and expected emissions reductions from those projects. And you cannot use any renewable energy credits in the first compliance period. So this is if you are above your 2024 to 2029 limits. If you are not above those limits and you are covered under Article 320, you should be able to file what's called a simple report. And this is if you are above those limits. So what this requires is that the decarbonization plan is submitted by May 1st or before May 1st. There's no grace period there. You must have a plan to meet the 2024 emissions limits and prove such by May 1st, 2027. So it buys you about 2 years. And you must demonstrate that the work for 2030 compliance is underway by May 1st of 2028. So this is very in-depth and requires a lot of thinking ahead. But if you are not in compliance with this first compliance period, this is one of the more common options. Next. And now we're going to talk about affordable housing. So as I mentioned, Article 320, 321, affordable housing could fall under either of these, depending on how much of the building is affordable housing. So we can go to the next slide. So if there are any rent-regulated units in your building, you receive tax credits during the construction, any federal programs, things like that. You can, look at this and see where you might fall. It's very important that you have the paperwork to justify such pathway. We can walk you through what that looks like at the accelerator, or your RDP can. But the prescriptive pathway is only applicable to buildings where more than 35% of the units are subject to rent regulation, that is rent stabilization or rent control, is an HDFC co-op, or has one or more units that participate in a federal project-based housing program. So that's Section 8 and a couple other are mentioned here. Or they participate in NYCHA Pact, and that would be, again, either the 2030 limits by 2024 or the prescriptive energy conservation measures, and this is a one-time report due May 2025. The other 2 pathways essentially are the same as what I just described, but you get some extra time to meet those emissions limits. So I won't go too much into this, but if you're not Article 321, you don't meet that criteria, you have affordable units, you may be on one of these other pathways that essentially just delay compliance for Article 320. Next, please. These are the PECMs, the prescriptive energy measures. This is what they look like. Well, it's not what they look like. This is what they are. It depends on the system you have. Some of these may not be relevant. But this is, if you see this list and you have most of these done, there are certain standards, of course. But this is kind of one of the traditional compliance pathways for Article 321. Essentially, you get all of these done, all the relevant ones done, and your emissions limits don't really matter. These are all done. You submit a one-time report, and unless there are any changes, you're done with Local 97. Next, please. If you are unable to do that in time, or are not below the 2030 limits and would like to give that a shot, there are a couple different ways for penalty mitigation for Article 321. It looks slightly different than it does for Article 320, but we have the unexpected or unforeseen event. Same applies, fire, flood, act of God kind of thing. If there's an eligible energy conservation project, the owner or property manager, you would likely know if you fall into this bucket. HPD, that means you've been working with HPD, that's very specific. So you should know if you fall under that one. But for mediated resolution, as in you just need more time, that has 2 ways of doing that. So if we're going for to be below the 2030 limits, you submit, again, sort of a decarb plan, a detailed plan to show how you will reach below 2030 limits by 2030. Or you get an attestation and a work plan describing how the 13 PECMs that I just showed will be completed by the end of 2025, December 31st, 2025, including which vendors are responsible. So this, instead of just having it now, you would submit a work plan and an attestation, as well as your energy benchmarking report to show that you are not in compliance, but you are working towards that. Next, please. And I just wanted to briefly touch on incentive offerings. If these projects seem very daunting to you, I just wanted to show that there are incentives and cost sharing from utilities out there, as well as the state. So if you have any questions about these or you're looking to do a project, definitely contact the accelerator. We are familiar with all of these, as well as the next slide. And the next one. If you have any kind of building, we're able to connect you with these various types of incentives if you're looking to get work done or need to get work done for Local Law 97. And that's what I got today. So I encourage you to reach out to us. We can walk through the situation for your specific building and portfolio. It's really helpful to talk a lot of this through. So I encourage you to contact one of our account managers. And I'll pass it back to Ari. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much, Christina. So wow, we had two great panelists with shared a lot of information with us, and I want to make sure we still have some time for questions. So I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit so we can get through and leave some time for questions. So let's talk about steam system balancing. Probably 4 out of every 5 buildings or so in New York City still employ steam systems. It provides one of the biggest opportunities for energy savings, and a lot of buildings, especially on 321, that'll be doing the pathway will remain on steam. And we're coming up with very innovative electrification solutions for steam as well. Some common problems, you have varying hot and cold apartments, open windows in the winter, tenant complaints, and a lot of these solutions for these common problems are measures that are included in that prescriptive pathway for affordable housing, and very effective as well, of course, for market rate co-ops and condos. That's master ventings, TRVs and orifice plates, steam trap repair. And really what we do is we take a holistic approach to steam system balancing. So we diagnose the entire system, and that's the best way to ensure that the system is running most efficiently. So some of these solutions will be steam traps, which generally are replaced every 3 to 5 years. That's both in units and the common area. They fail after a while. TRVs, which are individual radiator controls, pipe insulation. Orifice plates, I'll pause for a minute on that. This is a measure that we have been doing a lot of lately, especially with some of the larger like NYCHA developments. What it does is it regulates, engineered to regulate the amount of steam entering into the radiator, and it absolutely removes the need for this constant maintenance of steam traps every 3 to 5 years. So that means you eliminate the need to have to constantly replace those parts, as well as getting access to units and organizing with management and tenants. Master venting goes on the steam lines, the mains in the usually in the boiler room, and allows the steam to pass through the system efficiently. BES offers a local law turnkey solution, and this is for Article 320 and 321. We do a site survey. We prepare a report and proposal. In the case of 321, which is your image on the left, we go through the 13 measures, pinpoint exactly where you're in compliance, and we'll propose to do the work, or you can take that proposal and work with your own maintenance team or super. We will also help buildings apply for any available incentives, do the installation, and of course the filing. And we're offering services for Local Law 97, 320, 321, 88, 84. There's a lot of them, and we have been doing this for a long time. We're happy just to even just help answer some questions and help guide you through it. Of course, Christina is fantastic, and we turn to Christina sometimes for help ourselves. So also we'll have contact information at the end. Definitely reach out if you have any questions. At the end of 2023, BES launched a dedicated plumbing division. We're doing plumbing repairs and new construction. Even small pipe replacements all the way up to full gas and sprinkler systems, sewer line repairs or replacements. We also do maintenance contracts with buildings that need that prefer the peace of mind to have someone on speed dial that can come down in case anything urgent comes up. To tie to that is local law 152. We've been getting a lot of calls about it, a lot of work on it lately. It requires a master plumber to inspect your gas connections every 4 years. There's also a $10,000 penalty for failing to comply. We can do the inspections. We also help buildings correct any violations as well as all the paperwork and filing. There's one thing I wanted to bring up briefly. This is something actually Christina and I discussed a couple of weeks back, and we have a building that we are helping, and there was a published CBL list on the .gov website, NewYorkCity.gov, and correctly identified the building as being Article 321 in the 2024. Recently, however, .gov published a new list for 2025 showing the covered buildings, and the same building was now showing up in the Article 320 list. So this causes some concern because, of course, they were very focused on doing the prescriptive pathway. And the question is, why was it now showing up on the 320 list? So we actually reached out to the DOB at GHG Emissions. I actually got a response from them this morning, and it's letting us know that they are looking into the inquiry. They're looking into it and find out what happened. What I would suggest, and the reason why I wanted to show this is, if you are an Article 321 list, try to have your 2024 DHCR annual registration summary handy, as well as your rent roll report. That is going to be your evidence that if this happens to your building and you're on the 320 list, that you should be properly identified as an Article 321 building. Let's just discuss a case study quickly, and then we can move on to the Q&A. This was a Queens oil-fueled affordable building, 53 units, one pipe steam. And we were able to implement the 13 measures. We saved them 15% of their energy operating costs and 3,100 gallons. This is a NYCHA project we are just now in the process of finishing up. NYCHA Patterson, one of the largest NYCHA developments in the Bronx. We installed orifice plates and actually also repaired or replaced all the steam traps, both in units and in the common area. We estimate over there an 18% energy reduction in the entire project. BES is a paperless reporting company. What you're seeing over here on your screen on the left is the in-unit work. These are real-time reports that we provided as we were going through the Patterson job. You can see a very high success rate of getting into and accessing units. We're just about complete there, 97% in getting access to units, but sometimes we have to work with management and tenants to arrange and get access to the units. And on the right-hand side is the Patterson common area traps. We repaired or replaced all the common area steam traps. These reports are hourly, and management at any time can open up a browser and see exactly what's where the project is holding. And I'd like to now open it up for some Q&A. We have Eli on our team. He is here going to be monitoring the chat. Please, if you have any questions, let us know. And I'm going to put up the contact information on the screen so you can screen capture it, jot it down. Of course, we'll provide the slide deck afterwards as well. But just so you can have it in the meantime. Eli, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you all. And thank you, Ari, again for the presentation. The first question I have is from Ela. Thank you for the presentation. Has there been any penalties assessed yet? I understand that the activation date for penalties will once again be postponed.
Christina, you want to get that one?
Sure. If this is referring to Local Law 97 specifically, this 2025 will be the first compliance year, May 1st, 2025 being the first due date. So penalties have not been issued yet as the due date has not passed yet. If you're referring to another local law, you can reach out to us or the Sustainability Help Center if this is benchmarking related. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Christina. We'll root back a while. just before, that he was having some difficulty with the audio. So he wanted to, Ari, can you just reassure everyone that a recording will be sent out to everyone who enlisted?
Yes, we're going to be sending out a recording, a link to it, as well as the slide deck. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I had a couple of questions that were sent to me directly. Question one for Christina. We are behind in organizing our LL97 plan. Is there a deadline for filing for an extension, and how do we apply for the extension?
So there was an opportunity for an extension. If you're currently working on your plan and you have a contract with an RDP signed prior to February 1st, you would be eligible to request an extension. You have until June 30th to request that extension. However, I do want to flag it simply a filing extension. So the work would still need to be done prior to May 1st. If you think you need more time than that, you may need to look into one of the mediated resolution options. Those, if the plan is related to a mediated resolution, those have a hard due date of May 1st. So there's no extension or penalty mitigation requests or mediated resolutions.
Okay, thank you, Christina. We have another question that just came in. I'm a board member at a small Manhattan condo building. We have a property manager who's working on this, but how do we as a board best manage how he chooses the partners for this project?
Sorry, Ellie, how do you manage who chooses the partners for the project?
Asking, but how do we as a board best manage how the board members choose partners for this project?
So that's a great question. So I mean, BES, happens to be one of the service providers that work together with Accelerator. That list of service providers, I believe, is published on their website, but as well that someone like Christina, I realize now that I don't have Christina's contact information up on the screen. I'll correct that in the follow-up email after the event. But Accelerator can provide also a list of qualified service providers that they have experience working with, and the building can then price it out or see what the kind of relationship is, see the time frame. A lot of service providers right now are having a bottleneck as we get towards May 1st, and some of them might not be available to service the building right away. So it's time, it's maybe the cost, it's the reputation of the industry. We're certainly happy to step in and help with any questions and reach out to Christina as well.
Yeah, echoing what Ari said, it also, I would say, highly depends on the pathway that your building will be taking, what kind of firm may be best suited for what you need.
Thank you, Christina. The next question I have is for Alan. When will your product be ready to sell to building owners? For Ari, when is the best time of day to access the units to do your checking and installations?
I guess I'll take the first part of that, Ari. Well, thank you for that question. I really appreciate that. We're looking to have availability of the product by third quarter of 2025, but would love for you to reach out to me and become one of our test customers. And that would certainly come with some benefits if you were willing to work with us on developing the product and giving us some feedback.
All right, thanks, Alan. Could you repeat that second part?
Yeah, when is the best time of day to access the units to do your checking and installations?
That's a great question. The best time is when it's most convenient for the tenant. That's really, I would say that when we do a large project like kind of like a Nitro Patterson, we'll do kind of initial first wave, and some people are have more flexible schedules, or someone's home during the day, and it's and then after that, it's kind of working together with management and kind of working with the tenants to really work around their schedules to get access. And that's why we're very successful at getting access to 100% or close to 100% of units, because we're really working on the convenience of the tenant themselves.
Yeah, and I would just add to that as well, is that, when we do coordinate with management, we do make it available if it's more convenient for residents to be on site in the evening or on weekend if necessary. The next question I have is from Joan. I'm told in a few of my buildings that installing master vents will make the system unstable. Can I submit a letter from the contractor stating this?
Interesting. I think, Christina, that would be maybe for you.
Yeah, if this is related to the PECMs specifically, a lot of the, the reporting and compliance does come from the RDP. Whether or not that will suffice, I'm not DOB. I can't exactly speak to what they'll accept at this point since this is a pretty new law. But a lot of it does come down to the RDP's attestation. But master vents, are one of the requirements. And as far as the work we do, and maybe Ari can speak to this better, but it usually is an improvement in the system, and does make the system more efficient. But Mari, maybe you can speak to that a little more about the benefits of master venting.
Yeah, for sure. Master venting is really designed to allow steam to pass through the system more easily and more efficiently. So, without knowing really anything about the building itself, there are some buildings in some cases where the steam mains will run behind walls, and it requires a lot of breaking walls to get to them to install the vents. There are all kinds of different situations. Generally, master venting will definitely improve the efficiency of the steam system. But if you're working with someone that is telling you that it will create some issue with the system, I can't speak to it without knowing more. But as Christina said, I guess you can prepare to plead your case to DOB and see what comes back.
Okay, thank you, Ari. A couple of more. And what documentation is required to verify GFA?
It's a good question. Maybe Alan, you want to speak on that?
What's required to verify?
The gross floor area.
GFA, yeah.
Oh, in terms of our process, I mean, I think that might be something that gets derived from the portfolio manager, but that's something I'd have to investigate a little bit fuller and with our partners at Carbon Clear as well. But I can get back to you if you want to reach out to me.
Yeah, let me maybe just add a little bit onto what Alan was saying there regarding GFA. We have been speaking to some of our buildings and definitely recommending that they do a GFA audit. And the reason for that is because if you expand your gross floor area then is on file with the DOB, that will also increase your carbon emissions. So if you're close to the threshold of the emissions limit, or you're even thinking ahead to what will be in 2030, looking for ways to expand or increase your GFA. And a lot of times, a proper audit will show that there are a lot of gross area that is not, properly registered with the DOB. So, if you're close to the threshold, an audit's probably a good idea.
And quickly, just from the reporting document from DOB, it's usually the preferred method are measure drawings prepared by a surveyor or RDP. That's like the recommended method. But it's not mandatory. The RDP just has to attest to that square footage. If you have drawings or something like that, it's good to have documentation or some sort of GFA audit just to make sure everything is in order.
Thank you, Christina. And then lastly, we have KMS who wrote, I'm a board member in a pre-war Manhattan building. Our management company is telling us that we are in compliance for LL97 2025 and 2030 already. And they also don't believe the law will actually go fully into effect. True? Should we trust their judgment?
Yeah, go ahead, Christina.
Yeah, so the law was passed in 2019. It is happening. If you are already under the 2024 limits and in compliance, submitting a simple report is pretty straightforward. I would not suggest putting yourself at risk for these pretty hefty fines. That's, at the end of the day, it's your decision, but filing the report will be a lot cheaper than any of the fines you may face for not submitting it. So if you are if you're in compliance, I would submit the report. The law again was passed in 2019, and it's, as far as I know, not going anywhere. If you have any questions, you can contact the accelerator again, or have your management company do so. But up to you at the end of the day, but I would probably submit the report.
Yeah, I would also maybe add that there are, calculators. The accelerator has one, and there's also BE, has where it has historical data for the building, and it will compare your usage to the limits in 2024 and 2030. That would probably give you some peace of mind that in fact you are under the limits. As Christina shared earlier, most of the buildings in New York City are currently under 2024 limits. That number changes in 2030, but you can get some information online about where your building is at. You can also reach out to myself or Christina, and we'll be happy to help you kind of navigate that. But yeah, either way, that should be filed. So yeah, we're now 3 minutes over the hour. I appreciate everybody sticking around. Thank you very much, our panelists. Christina, you're a rock star. Thank you, Alan. We appreciate you taking time during your day. We're going to be doing another presentation on some exciting innovation and electrification in a couple of weeks. Please look out for that. If you have any questions, reach out. We will send up a follow-up email with the correct contact information for everyone. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Alan.
Very welcome.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.